Welcome to the Fantasy Football Forge. My name is Steve, and it is time for the wide receiver position. I have already released videos for the quarterbacks, tight ends, and the running backs, so please check those out if you need any help at those positions. As far as the wide receivers go, the wide receivers absolutely suck this week. I do not like them. Between weather, backup quarterbacks, third string quarterbacks even, and the matchups, it's just kind of an absolute mess. And as far as the weather goes, I've really only taken one into consideration so far, and that is the Cleveland versus New Orleans game. As far as I know, it's going to be windy, it's going to be cold, and there's also going to be a decent amount of precipitation. So, kind of a trifecta going on there. I don't really want to mess with that game outside of the running backs and probably the defenses too. Not really my specialty there. And so you will definitely see that in my rankings, there's a lot of stuff that you could sit here and say that guy's too low, that guy's too high. I understand that as we go through the rankings. But before that, there's also several wide receivers that are not on this list that I have ranked. And I will point out the ones on this list that I don't have ranked. So, and I'll explain why as we get to those guys. And so due to all of these factors and all of the unknowns as far as injuries go, on top of that, I am expecting a lot of tough decisions for people this week. I will be keeping my eyes on everything that is going on this week. I know there's more weather than just that game as well that could have some impacts, and I will be adjusting accordingly as, you know, with my rankings, which are up on the website, www.theffforge.com. There's a link down below in the description to the website with those rankings. So far, the quarterback, tight end, running back are all already up there. Wide receivers should be up there too by the time that this is posted. And my final rankings will also be up with me live on YouTube here 1 hour prior to kickoff on Saturday. Don't forget, Saturday is the main slate of games this week, so Christmas Eve. And that is a great place to stop on by, hang out, and ask me any of your start-sit questions. Or don't hang out, or you don't even have to ask me start-sit questions. You could just look at the rankings. And other than that, you can also ask me your start-sit questions, or even any waiver wire questions that you have asking about a guy, if you should pick them up and drop somebody else down in the comments below, and I will get to them and try and answer them as I can. So far, I've been able to answer all of them, but every week there's a few more, so at some point, I'll have to be selective or something, but please also help each other out and answer other people's questions. It's greatly appreciated by myself and others, I'm sure. Additionally, thank you to all the new subscribers and the old ones. It is very much appreciated. We are continuing to grow, so that's great. And then, I think it's time that we get on to this. So over here, we have my rankings on the left-hand side. I have them in tiers, so that is how we will go through them in the kind of grouping. And then here are the player names, the opponent. Here is the difficulty matchup of that opponent, and then here is the ECR and the difference between myself and the ECR. The ECR is the expert consensus ranking from Fantasy Pros website. Start off there, I move guys around, and then this week I did my projections first because, you know, it's time. You lose and you're out right now, so I wanted to put just a little bit extra effort into these videos because I know not everybody goes up and checks the website or comes and visits me to see my final rankings. So I want to get these as close to what my final rankings hopefully should look like as possible. And so the guys who I have some major differences with, which there are this week, I will go over and speak on those guys. So let's just start here with my first tier of the wide receivers for week 16. Is that what it is? Justin Jefferson in at wide receiver 1, followed by Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs, Amon-Ra St. Brown, A.J. Brown, Devontae Adams, Jamar Chase, Christian Watson, C.D. Lamb, D.K. Metcalf, and Keenan Allen to wrap that up at wide receiver 11. Christian Watson is the only one here that we need to speak about because I have him 10 spots higher than the ECR. The ECR on him is 18. I have him ranked 8th right now. I know that feels awfully high, and it has a lot to do with this opponent and the potential with that opponent. There is a huge upside, and if Christian Watson had gotten that touchdown that he really should have probably had this past weekend, and, you know, it's his own fault that he didn't get it, but had that happened, had that come through, then, well, I think more people, he would definitely be ranked higher than 18, we'll say it like that. So as far as these guys go, and a little ways down, yeah, Christian Watson does not have the same safe floor as many of these guys just due to the amount of targets that he gets in most games. But I will say this Green Bay offense looked the best that it has looked all season as far as I recall. The most in rhythm, which is huge. That's what Aaron Rodgers does best, is when the offense is in rhythm. Of course, I mean, any quarterback probably, but he throws two spots usually. He's kind of the receivers need to be where he's throwing the ball kind of guy. And additionally, his thumb, the balls appeared to be going where he wanted them to go. And it hasn't been like that for a while, so it appears that his thumb's feeling better, especially in super cold weather. That should have been an issue if it was still something that was bothering him, so I'm optimistic about the thumb until he cracks it on somebody's helmet. With that, let's get to the second tier of wide receivers, starting off at wide receiver 12 with Garrett Wilson, followed by DeAndre Hopkins, Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith, T. Higgins, Christian Kirk, Terry McLaurin, Mike Williams, DJ Moore, and Chris Godwin to wrap that up at wide receiver 21. And he is the only one that we need to talk about because I have him 11 spots behind the ECR, which means the ECR on him is at 10 this week. I have him 21st going up against Arizona. It's a pretty good matchup. This was in part due to my projections as far as moving him down here. It's a weird week, so I could definitely see him finishing, top 15, 16, we'll say, compared to top 12 there. But there's just some issues with what's been put on paper up to this point in the season that I'm not quite willing to put him as high as number 10. I understand the excitement this week going up against Arizona, but they'll probably be running the ball a fair bit anyways, and so it's going to be him or Mike Evans. I do think at least one of them should have a good week, and you'll see I actually do have Mike Evans for the first time in several weeks ranked right along with the experts. So let's move on to the next tier of wide receivers, and I believe this one's pretty big-ish. Starting off at wide receiver 22 with Zay Jones, followed by Mike Evans, Michael Pittman Jr., Amari Cooper, Alan Lazard, Darius Slayton, Brandon Ayuk, Juju Smith-Schuster, Chris Olave, Marquise Brown, Deontay Johnson, Jerry Jeudy, and Gabe Davis to wrap that up at wide receiver 34. And I'm feeling like a homer this week because I have Alan Lazard 11 spots ahead of the ECR. I have him ranked 26th. The ECR in him is at 37 going up against Miami. So I've talked about the matchup. I talked about how I feel like Green Bay is kind of finally moving on offense and feeling it. So I'm expecting this game to be a pretty back and forth game. Probably, the odds are that, I would say. I understand the concern by the experts of having Alan Lazard ranked 37th, but we can't forget what he's done, the connection that he does have with Aaron Rodgers, and the upside in a game like this. So I am, once again, going to put a certain amount of faith in Alan Lazard. So let's move on to Juju Smith-Schuster, who I've ranked 29th. The ECR is 22nd on him. I am 7 spots behind that, and he's going up against Seattle this week. Another game that could be pretty high scoring. The connection's been good with Patrick Mahomes as of late. I have no problem with him being ranked 22nd. Once again, this is a weird week for wide receivers, so I understand the right of having some of these other wide receivers ranked higher than him, and I just got distracted realizing that I have Amari Cooper ahead of the ECR. I'm going to have to move him back further due to the weather. But so Juju Smith's fine. Let's just move on to Jerry Jeudy here, who I have 9 spots behind the ECR. I have him ranked at 33rd. ECR on him is 24th. Going up against Los Angeles Rams. It's a pretty darn good matchup. I should probably have him ranked a little higher. I think I'm going to move him up to about 30, which would put me 6 spots behind the ECR. So hopefully I remember to do that right after this video is done. But there's nothing specifically wrong with Jerry Jeudy. That offense just hasn't been very good most of this year. And so scoring opportunities, my projections probably didn't really like that. And now, usually helps to go back a day later for myself to go back and look at these and say, oh, yeah, you know what? I really feel strongly about this once I'm not looking at the projections anymore. So, yeah, we'll just keep moving on here to the next tier of wide receivers. And this is probably the biggest one. Starting off at wide receiver 35 with Drake London, followed by Adam Thielen, Jacoby Myers, Isaiah Hodgins, George Pickens, Marquise Goodwin, Curtis Samuel, Jahan Dotson, Tyler Boyd, DJ Shark Jr., Rashid Shaheed, Donovan Peoples-Jones, Mac Hollins, and Michael Gallup. Okay, it's not that huge. So Isaiah Hodgins, I have 16 spots ahead of the ECR right now. I have him ranked 38th. The ECR on him is 54th, going up against Minnesota. The projections loved him. I like him quite a bit, and in a week where I have a lot of questions and issues with guys, I'm willing to take my touchdown suspicions on him against Minnesota compared to a lot of these guys in their matchups, but there's truly a lot of arguments that could be made for guys within this tier against one another easily. I do think that 54 is a little bit low, though, on Isaiah Hodgins. I understand the resilience to get on a new name like that, but yeah, that's it. So let's explain quickly here. Chris Moore, I do not currently have ranked because I'm really only want one wide receiver at all from Houston in my projections that I would feel comfortable with playing, and that'd be the top wide receiver. And I don't think that he's going to be the number one wide receiver this week. It's probably going to be Brandon Cooks, it looks like, coming back. Nobody, it might be nobody that comes back. And so I'm just going to have to follow the news leading up towards closer to kickoff on the health of those guys and just kind of figure it out, because Tennessee is a very good matchup that there should be some value with the wide receiver there for Houston. Still risky, though, no matter what. And next up here, I have Rashid Shaheed, ranked 46th. The ECR on him is 60th, so I'm 14 spots higher than the experts currently going in Cleveland, going up against Cleveland. It's a bad weather game. So I moved him back from a lot from my projections, more from where I had him after looking at my projections, and I might have to move him back a little bit more, but you can see kind of Rashid Shaheed and Donovan Peoples-Jones. I just kept putting guys ahead of them until there was a point where I'm like, well, one big play from them is possible, and I think would probably be better than some of these other guys. Is really all it came down to. Looking for that one big play, even a bad weather game at this point in the rankings. And so you can see Donovan Peoples-Jones, I have 8 spots behind the ECR. The ECR is 39th, I'm having 47th. I just explained why, and that has everything to do with the weather there. And that's going to bring us to our last tier here, which I have Joshua Palmer, Van Jefferson, Paris Campbell, Elijah Moore, Marquise Valdes-Scantling, Terrace Marshall Jr., and Alec Pierce. Out of those, there's only one that we need to talk about, and then I'll go through these guys after that, which is Josh Palmer, who I have 10 spots behind the ECR. I have him ranked 51st. ECR on him is 41. I projected him, and he was pretty far back in my projections, so I'm basically listening to that. His usage was down last week, even though he did end up having, I think he had a pretty decent week, but everything as far as opportunities on the field were down. I expect him to go down a little bit more, and Mike Williams to go up just a little bit from where they were. So just an opportunity issue for Joshua Palmer. Now, Ricky James Jr., great matchup. I'm not ranking him. I like 2 other receivers for New York. I don't need a third receiver on in my rankings. So these are guys that you could always ask me about, but there's my opinion on Richie James Jr. I wouldn't go for it. Then KJ Osborne, I'm not ranking. I don't need the third receiver on Minnesota. He had a huge week last week, but I'm not going from unranked to ranked because of 1 week, unless there's some sort of injury ahead of that happened. As far as I'm aware, and I do want to double check this, Adam Thielen didn't have some sort of massive drop in usage, so I don't think I missed anything there. I'm not chasing last week. I want to see it one more time. Definitely a guy you could stash for the championship. Maybe check out who their opponent is next week first. Somebody I wished I had put in my waiver wire video, and I did not, so my mistake there. Then Demarcus Robinson, I have taken off of my ranking list right now. I do have him sitting in a not ranked pile, waiting to potentially be ranked. I don't want the third quarterback for the Ravens, who have really been struggling with the pass anyways with their primary 2 quarterbacks. I don't want the target for that quarterback. So Demarcus Robinson currently off my list. If Tyler Huntley comes back, I will then project him and get him in there. He would still be pretty far back on the list, but going up against Atlanta, decent matchup. Then Isaiah McKenzie, I have taken off. It is a good matchup here, but I don't trust this is going to be a usage. How many times he's going to get on the field issue again. With Cole Beasley coming in last week. Didn't get on the field a whole lot or eat into Isaiah McKenzie's usage a whole lot last week. Isaiah really hasn't been great this year outside of just a couple of games anyways, so I want to stay away from that. That is it for the wide receivers. Bunch of announcements at the beginning of the video, so let's just end it here. Thank you very much. Let's rock and roll this week. I hope to see you live on Saturday, and Merry Christmas if I don't, and I will have my, just like I did last week, I'll have my Saturday special video where I go through my steel, stock, and scrap. Basically, I start them, sit them up on Friday at some point, as soon as I can on Friday. So I'll be working on that today.